Well, hello everyone. I am here with Shananti, and we are going to talk about the conference coming up. We are thrilled to come together and invite all of you guys to the conference, and we're going to be talking about the classes and all that you're going to be getting out of this world-class conference. And Shananti, will you please tell everybody what this conference is about and who's invited? And I'm also here to tell you guys in detail about my class, what you're going to learn and what it's all about. But this is so exciting. This is going to be the biggest and the best conference going in the world. So Shananti, tell us all about the conference, and then I'll tell you about my class.
Excellent, Joni. I'm so excited to be here with you to have this collaborative discussion about your lecture and the Parashara conference. The Parashara conference is currently the world's largest Vedic astrology conference. We have 34 different faculty members from 11 different countries, and it's a big international event because one of the things that I've been attempting to do is kind of make Jodish this beautiful international thing. I know you have students from all over the world, so we have faculty and students from all over the world. And it's 5 days long from November 20th to the 24th of this year. And there's 16 hours of lectures every day. And it is hosted on Zoom. So you can just go to parasharaconference.com and the schedule's on there, registration's on there. There's class descriptions, and you can see these incredible faculty members. I mean, we have people like Sanjay Rath, we have Visti Larson, we have Freedom Cole, we have Narasimha Rao, we have Dr. Harness from Sedona, we have Dr. Pai, Eve Mendoza, pretty much Bobby G. Kalita. So we have all these people from all these different lineages discussing on the theme this year, which is the dispelling of fear. And so I'm just very, very excited for your lecture. I know you're going to be talking a little bit about the dispelling of fear using the eclipses in Rahu Ketu. Is that correct?
That's correct. So I'm going to be talking about dispelling fear, Rahu and Ketu, our destiny and our future. I'm going to be going through all the different years and how the nodes of the moon, Rahu and Ketu, are going to be changing signs, because every time they go into a particular sign, they produce different results. I mean, the world changes. And so what I'm going to be talking about is the cycles. And of course, you know, Rahu and Ketu, they cause eclipses. And I love to talk about eclipses because eclipses are so symbolic. And you know, most of astrology is symbolic. So what we're talking about is the darkening of the light when we have an eclipse. And we have eclipses, they're not uncommon. We have them twice a year, solar and lunar eclipse, but they happen 6 months apart. So the solar eclipse is the new moon with Rahu or Ketu, and 2 weeks later or before the solar eclipse, we have a lunar eclipse, and that's when you have a full moon with Rahu and Ketu. And so what they really are, the Rahu and Ketu are actually where the nodes of the moon hit the ecliptic. And it's kind of hard to imagine, but it's like where the moon hits the path of the sun, which is called the ecliptic that goes around the earth. Where the moon hits that going upward, it's Rahu, and where it hits the path of the sun going downward, it's Ketu. One brings us into life, one takes us out of life. But really, what we're talking about is when the sun, the moon, and the earth align. That's what happens during these times. And the shadows are cast either on the sun or the moon. With the solar eclipse, it's the sun. With the lunar eclipse, it's the moon. So what I want to bring into realization is that when the light is darkened, of course, you know, in ancient times, people were very fearful. They thought it was the end of the world. In the middle of the day, it got dark. And we just had a total solar eclipse in Dallas about a year and a half ago. And I really experienced a total solar eclipse in the middle of the day. It was so eerie. All of a sudden, I didn't expect it to get that dark. It did. Everything got dark for a few minutes. And I was like, no wonder the ancients were afraid of this. They didn't understand. But the whole symbology is when the darkness comes into when it's light, that's when we can discover things about ourselves. I always say during the times of eclipses, we discover things that we didn't know about. And these things can be so healing. And in the ancient times, I say, don't go out and be around eclipses because they're dangerous, they're bad. I feel like they bring out the things that we need to heal. And yeah, sometimes that can be difficult. It doesn't feel good to see our shadows, right? But we have to see our shadows to heal. That's what's really going on. But I really got into looking at world events in terms of this because Rahu and Ketu will stay in a sign for 18 months. But for them to go through all 12 signs of the zodiac, it takes about 18 and a half years. And I find it so interesting that every 18 and a half years in our life, we go through some of the biggest changes of our life. Think about it when you're 18 and a half, what happens? You leave home, you go to college, but your life changes dramatically no matter what. And therefore, another 18 and a half years, you can talk about age 36 to 37, another big change. And then again, another 18, every 18 and a half years, our life changes dramatically because that's when Rahu and Ketu will come back to where they were when you were born. So this is so interesting and important to me. But what I discovered in prediction was that every time they went into particular signs, they created amazing changes. And they were all kind of similar. So I went back historically. And what got me going with this was thinking about 9/11. What caused that? That really did change the world forever. I mean, the way we travel, going through security, everything changed. And we couldn't believe what was going on with the World Trade Centers. My God, what caused that? So I went back and I saw that Rahu was in Gemini, Ketu was in Sagittarius. I know you guys have heard me talk about this for so long, but this is the events that got me started on looking at this. So then I said, okay, if that caused that, then what happened 18 and a half years prior to that? So I went back, and it was around 1982. I thought, what happened then? And then it occurred to me that was the AIDS virus. Wow, that was a really big deal. We didn't know what was causing it. There was so much fear. So you see, there's always this fear element with Rahu and Ketu. So I love that you talk about, dispelling fear for this conference. Then I went back 18 and a half years prior to that, and we came up with 1963. What happened then? Kennedy's assassination. And so then I went back one more time, and I thought, this is enough. I got it. It was 1945. That was the bombing of Hiroshima. And all of these times were when Rahu was in Gemini and Ketu was in Sagittarius. And then I started looking, even the nakshatras were very meaningful because Rahu was in, it was in Ardra. Ardra's symbol is a teardrop. And Ketu was in Mula, which is destruction. So even the stars, the nakshatras, were relative to where Rahu and Ketu are. So it was around 2017, I started writing my book on Rahu and Ketu. And I noticed that they were coming up in 2020 again in these signs. So I predicted that the world would change again forever. Guess what happened? You know it. It was the nightmare that we all went through with COVID. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to write a book about the next time that they come to these signs, which will be the year of 2038. But in the process of writing this book, I happened to see some years that were almost as bad. Yes. And what I did, and actually I have the book in hand. This is the book I wrote on this. And this is pretty much going to be the handout for the for the class I'm doing. It's a 2.5 hour class that I'm going to go through all the different years and what happened. But I thought maybe it would be interesting for you to see the year of 2030 and 2031, because we're getting closer to that year. And remember, there's so many cycles. So what I talk about in my class is going to be not only when Rahu and Ketu are in particular signs, but also when they line up with Saturn or Jupiter. Huge, big deal. These two planets, I call them the social planets. They deal with the economy, they deal with social events in the world. And then what I also line them up with is something that I call Neovadic astrology, which is when I bring in the outer planets. And yes, in Vedic astrology, traditionally, they don't use the outer planets. But I do, because they're more transpersonal. Yes, they do not really reflect so much the personal stuff in our lives. That's why the Vedic astrologers didn't use them. But they do deal with the collective unconsciousness of the planet. Therefore, they are good determinants of what's happening in the future. So when I see Rahu and Ketu line up with these outer planets, we really see changes in the world. So what I did was a massive research project. I went back every time Rahu and Ketu were in a sign for 18 months and looked historically what was going on as to the probability of what could happen. Were they with outer planets? What nakshatras they were in? And most of all, were they with Saturn or Jupiter, and what signs they were in? So I went back historically, and of course, we'll never get exactly the same lineups, you know that, but we can find where there's similarities. Therefore, this helps us with future prediction. So do you want to say anything about this before I can show you some charts if you'd like to see, especially, well, you know what, I think I can pull up a chart also about what's coming up next summer, or I'm sorry, a lot of people are in Australia. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, you're winter, but I'm talking about the month of July. It's an amazing month for prosperity and expansion, and consciousness will change. But most of all, a lot of people are really, really concerned about the lineup that's going to be happening in 2030 and 2031. I thought I might show you a few of those charts.
Joni, I just want to thank you for bringing your groundbreaking research to the Parashara conference. Everyone on our side, on the administrative team, is just so excited. Your ability to look at research historically and bring it into the future is so incredible, and you're so gifted at this. And I'm just so excited to, of course, personally host your lecture, but just really been enjoying your research, and so happy you're bringing it to the conference. And of course, I would love to get a little taste of what to expect through a chart right now.
Thank you. Well, you know, I want to do this sincerely to help humanity, because here's the thing. It is about dispelling the fear. If we know what's here to happen, we can prepare. It's better to be prepared than to be caught off guard, right? There's so many things that are about to happen. And it's like, you know, I've told my story so many times, people are probably tired of hearing it. But I've been an astrologer practically, well, my whole life. And when I was a little girl, I was around in 1963. And the night before Kennedy came to Dallas, my mother took my sisters out of school to go greet him. So it was like a huge part of my life. But I remember the night before he came, Jean Dixon, a psychic astrologer, believe it or not, I'm not kidding you. She went on TV. I saw her with my own two eyes. It was even a black and white TV. She begged Kennedy not to come to Dallas or he'd be assassinated. And of course, we know what happened. And I thought, what if he listened to her? Could the world be different? And I was looking at Charlie Kirk's chart, and here's another instance. I don't know if you looked at his chart, but of course we don't have his time. But for his birthday, the sun would be the same degree the entire day. Transiting Mars was exactly on his sun. I mean, on that day, Mars rules weapons, guns, knives, fire. And I know it happens every 2 years, but don't go out publicly and speak when you have Mars on your sun, when you know you're a target. Anyway, I just think astrology is such a tool to help people avert things, help us in the future. That's all. That's what I think we should all be looking astrology for. And that's why I do this work, to help people so we can avert things and, and also use the good times for what they're good for. That's astrology for me. Okay. You want to say anything about that?
I mean, I just think that's so beautiful because at the heart of the theme of the conference is dispelling fear. And the fact of the matter is that, historically and very commonly, we have very, very difficult transits that represent very, very difficult things. And so at the heart of dispelling fear is awareness. And with awareness can be prevention.
Right.
And this idea of prevention through awareness is something that it's just such a valuable tool in Vedic astrology to utilize the understanding of transits, to understand what can we be aware of to prevent catastrophe.
Right.
And I love that your lecture is at the heart of this idea of what can we do through our study of Jyotish, the historically, and then looking forward to maybe prevent future catastrophes. And you really, it's kind of it's a service that you're providing. So I just want to give you kudos to that.
Thank you. So astrology is a tool to use for our self-betterment, period. That's what it should be for. And it is used for that. I love it. It is the greatest tool that we have been gifted by the great masters, right? The great seers, the rishis. I love it. All right. So I thought I might share my screen. And forgive me, guys, I'm just going to be showing the South Indian style chart. I know a lot of you use the North, but just focus on where these planets are. You don't have to look at the whole chart. And I think it's very clear what the charts I'm going to show you. So let me share my screen. And here we go. And over here I wanted to start with the year of 2030 because a lot of people have been going, even in some of my live YouTubes, people are going, what about 2030? And yes, this is the time of a solar eclipse, which will be June 1st, 2030. And the solar eclipse, once again, is where the sun and the moon come together exactly the same degree. And they're tied up with either Rahu or Ketu. So, 6 months apart, we have an eclipse. And one will be with Ketu, one will be with Rahu. And this is what I wanted to show you. So we have the new moon with Ketu. And Ketu's solar eclipses are a little different than Rahu's because Ketu will deal with the sense of losses, losing things, letting go, right? But here is what I see here. The outer planet Uranus is very close to Ketu. And Uranus has a cycle of about 84 years that it takes to go through the whole 12 signs of the zodiac. And the last time that it was right here, believe it or not, at 2324 degrees, was around the time of the bombing of Hiroshima. Okay, so that was what, 1945. You can see that that was about 84 years ago. And so it's return here, but with Ketu, which can represent losses. And the Mars Saturn conjunction in Taurus is very important. That's a very difficult combination. And I also find that when you have the eclipses tied up with either Jupiter or Saturn, you're going to find these events that are catastrophic. Because believe it or not, 9/11 was when Jupiter was tied up with Rahu. And now we have Saturn. But Mars, in my book and in all of my research, I find Mars is like the trigger, because Saturn will be with Uranus for 2.5 years, right? Saturn stays in a sign for 2.5 years. So it'll be traveling close to Uranus for that long. And then we have the eclipse, which happens on June 1st. But K2 is tied up with Saturn and Uranus during this time. But the trigger's when Mars comes and hits it. Just like on 9/11, we had where Mars went exactly to conjoin K2 opposed to Jupiter Rahu. And remember, I was always talking about that axis. But this is very significant that Mars will come and trigger this. Mars stays in a sign for approximately, well, it stays in a sign for about 18, let me see it. It'll take 2 years for it to go through the whole zodiac. So it stays in a sign for about 6 weeks. But when it gets close to the sun and the moon is going to be the trigger. Look at it's within a few days. That is an absolute trigger. So I'm very concerned about this. But most people think, now here's another thing to consider. Taurus is about money and finances. And Saturn coming in this, there has been a lot of talk that this is going to be where the banks are going to falter, the stock market, everything on the economic front is going to falter. And I think it's through a big event. A lot of people say, well, what do you think it is, Joni? Well, let me just say this. Right before COVID happened, I thought it was going to be a terrorist attack. All right. So I wasn't exactly right with the details of it. But you know what? In essence, it kind of was. Don't you kind of think COVID kind of in a way? I mean, it killed more people than 9/11. Let's get real here. But this is really treacherous. And here's another thing. I went to the next solar eclipse 1 year later that happens in May. And 2031 is another huge time frame. Again, it's when the sun and the moon will align with K2, this time in the early degrees. But Saturn's going to be in Rohini. And it has been written in the ancient scriptures that when Saturn goes into Rohini, that you can expect dramatic and catastrophic events. And during 9/11, Saturn was in Rohini. Now we know this will happen, approximately every 30 years too. But it is a very difficult time. And Saturn is aligning with Uranus. And this was also what was going on around the time of the bombing of Hiroshima. And even another time when we had Uranus around here was when Pearl Harbor was attacked. So those times were more about attacks. But I'm not quite sure. I think it's going to have more to do about the banking, the money. And let me just say, unfortunately, that's what motivates the world. in many respects. They say even the world war is motivated because of money, which is a sad predicament. I can't wait till we reach a higher consciousness on this planet where it's not all about, greed and money. But at this stage in the game, it's still about that. So, what do you think about this in terms of what's going to happen? Do you have any thoughts on this as well?
I mean, these charts are so powerful, and I'm getting chills just looking at them. Like a lot of the research, and I've had lots of debates with other astrologers about how Rahu and Ketu will act in different nakshatras. I know we just, when we did our panel in Sedona, a lot of my research is nakshatra based. And so when Ketu's in Rohini, many, including myself, consider this to be one of the debilitation positions of Ketu. Ketu is quite malefic in Taurus, and then in Rohini, which is moon influenced, creates an even deeper debilitation position with the Ketu. Mm-hmm. So the potential for the malefic energy. And then when you have Rahu in Jyeshta, which has that Mercury influence, gives power to the Rahu. So the power that's coming from the Rahu position in Jyeshta gives, and the malefic energy, the very dark influence from Ketu and Rohini on the opposite side, I could see that being something that is potentially very difficult. Plus the fact that you have Ketu, it looks like it's conjunct Sun, Moon, and Mars. So then from a shadow aspect perspective, you have Ketu affecting Scorpio and Aries. So then we have that Ketu on the Rahu, and we have the Ketu on, it looks like Venus and Mercury, because that's in Aries at that time. Mm-hmm. Then you also have Ketu Sun. So Ketu's also in Leo. No planets there. So, okay. And then we have Ketu Moon. So we have Ketu also strongly affecting the fifth and the sixth house as well. That sixth house effect on Ketu can cause an even more detrimental or destructive event. So, this one's scary. You know what I mean? This one. So, and I think that sometimes when I feel the energy of it too, in terms of what the possibilities might be, Jyeshta, the elder, the chief, Rohini, this destructive energy, which has to do with land and property. So I do feel that there could be some type of war, dictator energy. When I think of Rahu and Jyeshta, the first thing that comes to my mind is some type of dark leader or dictator. So those are just some of the things that are coming to me.
I agree with you totally. And you know what I just realized looking at this? I don't even know if I probably wrote about this in the book because I'm really big into fixed stars. And I love the stars. Why? Because that's what the nakshatras are. They are the stars that, nakshatras, and they're called asterisms, which means stars. And 16 degrees of Taurus is exactly conjunct Aldebaran. And guess what's opposite? Antares, which is the star of war. I just realized that. So fixed stars these are the royal stars that are so potent and powerful. And this is exact 16 degrees. I just realized that. That is astounding. This is a time that we need to mentally prepare. And as we get closer to these dates, I'll be really digging deep as to what we need to do. As a matter of fact, I talked to a guy yesterday, one of my clients. He was saying how a lot of people that work with the markets and prediction, they work with the algorithms and the internet, they said this is the time the banks are all going to collapse. And I thought, wow, this is happening in Taurus. This could happen. I said, we got to figure out a safe place. He says, there's no safe place to put our money. I don't know what we're going to have to figure out. But this is preventive. We're going to find a way to prevent things and help, and maybe bring a lot of prayer circles together where we can all pray and raise the vibrational frequency on the planet to protect us and just protect us. It's not always about money. And, I know a lot of people with a lot of money, and money doesn't buy happiness. So we have to find, a way to elevate consciousness to really heal our planet. We're here all for a reason, and we're all here to learn and to grow spiritually. So maybe this is what needs to happen for our spiritual growth.
Wow, Joni, I love that so much. And I think one of the things because of this, we are seeing K2. It is affecting Aries house because of its conjunction with Mars in Rohini. So therefore, K2's on the Venus and its signification on wealth and money and finances. We could be seeing economic or fiscal catastrophe of some sort. And I really like what you said about it in terms of dispelling fear, which is like that's the way the consciousness has to move. Because when there's such an emphasis in society, in government, in politics, on finances, the only way that we're going to transcend this type of hyper focus on it is through its destruction, right? Through the destruction of the hyper emphasis of wealth. This is where we move to a collective consciousness where maybe there are things that are more valuable than the dollar.
Exactly. This is probably the only way to heal this collective consciousness of greed. And there's really a few families that control the planet, and they're not on Forbes list. Let me just tell you, they're way beyond that. And maybe this is what we need to wake up the consciousness on planet Earth, that it's not just about money and gains and greed. It's about something higher. So yeah, everything happens for a divine reason in my book, because we may think it's something bad, but something good comes out of it. Always. A lot of people said that about COVID. A lot of people got to start working at home. A lot of people started realizing the corruption in the government from it all and how we're all being controlled. A lot of good came out of it, though. Families coming together. And anyone that knows me, that's my big topic. Family's everything. We got to come together with our family. That's the core essence of the healing of our world, to have a better family. When I used to go to Turkey all the time, this is really funny. I have so many wonderful friends in Turkey. I used to go there and teach all the time. But one day I was walking with one of my Turkish friends, and I said, I don't see any street people out here. How is that? You think of Turkey and you're thinking all these countries, there's going to be street people and people impoverished. I didn't see any. I said, why is that? She says, because we believe in family. When we see someone out there in the street, our family will take them in. We're not going to allow our family members to be out there impoverished by themselves on a street. So it really drove home the power of family, togetherness, and love. When we come together with that, we're not going to have all these world problems or, issues. I know it's bigger than that, but if we do come together with the love of family, that is going to help in many respects. And COVID kind of did that for us. Maybe this will do that for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that too, because Rohini has that like feminine, motherly, almost maternal or matriarchal energy. The moon is going to be in there at that time, conjunct all these malefic energies. And I find that too in general with catastrophe. You go back to 9/11, there was more unity in this country and in the world after 9/11 than there was at any other time since then. So a lot of times these destructive events, the part of the sometimes the greatest gifts come in the darkest wrapping, and I find that when these type of events happen, the world comes together, countries come together, the families and individuals put their differences aside and say, let's just love each other, let's just be there for each other. Let's just support each other. So I think that there's a lot of this energy in in that chart that we were looking at for
Yeah.
sure.
So we always have to look at what can we learn through this? And it's always got a spiritual lesson. And we always have to remind ourselves why we're here. And when we think, and so many times something good comes out of something bad. And sometimes something bad comes out of something good. You know, people that win the lottery, somehow their life falls apart. But there's always a spiritual lesson. And if we can see it like that, boy, are we going to dispel the fear, because there's nothing to fear. We never die. We're always divinely protected when we connect to our inner spirit, which is the divine in all of us. So there's really nothing to fear. But I just wanted to give everyone a taste of what I'm going to do in this class, I'm going to go through all the way to the year of 2038. I know I could go to 2042, but 2038 is another time of crises. Why? Because Rahu will be in Gemini and Ketu will be in Sagittarius. And boy, does it, and once again, it's triggered by Mars and Uranus, just like this 2030 is triggered by Mars and Uranus. So will the 2038. But I thought I might give us a little peek preview into 2030 and 2031 because they're a lot closer. We'll worry about the 2038. I actually wanted to write this book just in case I wasn't here, but in 2038, so it would be documented that, you know what, these nodes of the moon, Rahu and Ketu, and eclipses really do give us an idea of the future and what's ahead and how we can use astrology. Probably by the time of 2038, with AI and everything, astrology will be much, much, much more advanced. We're just on the tip of the iceberg with learning what astrology can do with us in understanding these cycles of the Rahu and Ketu and eclipses.
Incredible. So I hope you'll join Joni and us and many of our beloved faculty and Jyotish family at the Parashara conference. Again, I'm just pulling up the website right here so you can get a little clip, parasharaconference.com. It's /registration. We're going to have the link in the comments and descriptions of this video. We have all sorts of different packages. You can get the whole conference, and that's encouraged for the diverse faculty. But if you just want to attend Joni's lecture, she has a single day pass as well. So we hope you'll join us in November. Joni, I'm so grateful that you're going to be there. And this little taste, this little tidbit of what to expect has me hungry for more. So
thank you for putting this conference on. You are doing such a favor for our community and the world to learn more about Jyotish and the power of astrology. So kudos to you and all of your hard work to get this thing going and to make the world very aware of the power of Vedic astrology to help us and to help us better connect to our inner spirit, because that's what astrology is for. It's for our divine connection and the self-betterment of each of us and humanity. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
That's so touching. I'm so grateful for that. It's my honor and pleasure, and I look forward to many exciting collaborations and work together in this year and in the coming years. Thank you, Joni.
Thank you.